The hospital's security canine repeatedly barked at a nurse, triggering alarms that were perplexing. However, when security reviewed the camera footage, the medical staff was stunned by what they observed. Here's the account of events. Before we proceed with today's story, please leave a comment below indicating your location. And if you enjoy remarkable police dog stories such as this one, be sure to subscribe for future content. You won't want to miss what's coming next. The consistent beeping of vital sign monitors provided a steady soundscape to the busy evening shift at Memorial General Hospital. Officer Trevor Daniels walked through the main lobby, Ranger positioned perfectly at his heel. The Belgian Malinois' muscular build displayed the unmistakable presence of a working dog, his alert eyes surveying their surroundings with professional focus. Evening, Officer Trevor Daniels. Sandra called from the information desk. Making your rounds? Just starting, Daniels responded. Sandra then lowered her voice. Dr. Harper was inquiring about prescription counts again in oncology. It's probably nothing, but I thought you should be aware, she added. Daniels acknowledged, registering the information. After 3 weeks assigned to this hospital security detail, the pharmaceutical discrepancies that had prompted his assignment remained elusive. Memorial General had requested canine assistance after noticing subtle irregularities in their medication tracking. Nothing dramatic, but concerning enough for the administration to seek specialized help. Daniels hadn't planned on becoming a canine handler. His career path had been directed towards tactical response until a high-speed chase resulted in 3 broken ribs and a shattered femur. When the canine division proposed he might possess the appropriate temperament for handler work, he initially doubted it. Then he encountered Ranger, already demonstrating remarkable focus and seemingly understanding Daniels' physical limitations even before Daniels himself recognized them. 4 years later, that unexpected partnership had resulted in one of the department's highest success rates. They communicated with quiet efficiency. A minor adjustment in Daniels' posture would guide Ranger's focus. The slightest movement in the dog's ear would warn Daniels of something needing attention as they approached the east corridor containing the specialized care units. Daniels observed a distinct change in Ranger's behavior. The dog's ears rose, his walk becoming more measured, muscles tightening beneath his short tan coat. The shift was slight, but noticeable to Daniels. Following Ranger's attention, he observed a nurse exiting pediatric oncology, maneuvering a medication cart. She moved with practiced ease, reviewing something on a tablet. Her appearance gave no indication of anything out of the ordinary. Wearing standard blue scrubs, with dark hair pulled back neatly, she presented the professional demeanor typical of experienced medical staff. Yet Ranger's behavior continued to intensify, shifting into what Daniels recognized as pre-alert posture. Not the full alert for narcotics or contraband, but the preparatory stance suggesting something had captured his highly trained senses. "Easy, boy," Daniels murmured as they approached. The nurse looked up, offering a professional smile that reached her tired eyes. The identification on her badge read Abigail Winters, RN, Pediatric Oncology. "Good evening, officer," she said, her voice even and composed. "First time seeing a police dog in our department." Daniels replied, "We're checking all departments. Just routine security rounds." As she passed by, Ranger's head followed her, his focus intense, which sparked Daniels' investigative instincts. It wasn't his standard alert for narcotics. This presented an unusual situation, deviating from their typical detection procedures. "First time on the oncology floor?" inquired Dr. Martin, the hospital security chief, as he approached from a nearby corridor. "Abigail Winters is one of our top performers. She transferred from Chicago Memorial about 18 months ago. Triple certified, proficient in 4 languages, and she volunteers at the free clinic on weekends. We're fortunate to have her." As they continued their patrol, Daniels resolved to learn more about Abigail Winters. Throughout their time working together, Ranger had never been mistaken when he focused his attention in this manner. For the subsequent 4 days, Daniels modified their patrol routes to incorporate more regular passes through the pediatric oncology department. He stated it was part of a comprehensive coverage plan. However, his real intention was to witness additional interactions between Ranger and Nurse Winters. Every encounter yielded the same outcome. Ranger's focused attention, a subtle tension in his body, but without the formal alert he'd been trained to give for narcotics or other contraband. James Wong, the night security supervisor, observed as they reviewed camera footage in the security office. Something I should know about? Daniels hesitated, reluctant to voice suspicions based solely on his dog's behavior. Just being thorough, Ranger has shown some interest in that department. Wong raised an eyebrow. He wondered if the interest was in medications or in Nurse Winters, noting that both he and his dog had observed her. He smiled. You wouldn't be the first officer captivated by those green eyes. He added that half the male staff had asked her out. Daniels insisted it was professional interest, though he understood the assumption. Abigail Winters was undeniably attractive, but it was her interaction with Ranger that held his attention. He then inquired, has Winters ever been involved in any security incidents? Were there any medication errors, patient grievances, or anything out of the ordinary? Wong's face became serious. Actually, the opposite. She consistently achieves the highest patient satisfaction scores within the department. Families often request her directly for end-stage cases. He examined Daniels intently. What's the reason for the focus on our top nurse? Rather than providing a direct response, Daniels inquired, could you retrieve patient outcome data for pediatric oncology, covering the past 18 months organized by attending nurse? Wong appeared uneasy but agreed, accessing the hospital's data analytics system. This is not a common occurrence, as these reports usually require administrative approval. Please consider it part of our security audit, Daniels responded, observing the data appear on screen. The resulting graph displayed patient mortality rates, categorized by nursing staff. The majority of nurses were near the statistical average, given the seriousness of pediatric cancer cases. One statistic stood out subtly yet steadily. It was Nurse Abigail Winters' performance. That's peculiar, Wong commented. Her patient mortality rate was approximately 8% higher than expected based on statistical models. Could be a chance occurrence, Daniels offered, presenting an alternative viewpoint. Perhaps she receives the most challenging patient assignments. Wong acknowledged this possibility, though a concerned look crossed his face. However, the patient assignment rotation system is designed to distribute complex cases fairly among all competent staff. He entered a few more keystrokes, displaying another report. This presented another anomaly, unplanned medication interventions during night shifts. These were instances where patients required urgent treatment due to unexpected reactions or complications. This graph highlighted a clearer trend. Emergency interventions occurred at almost double the rate during winter shifts when compared to other nurses handling comparable patient assignments. Has anyone looked into this? Daniels inquired. Wong indicated his disagreement. These connections would only become noticeable if someone was actively searching for them. Medicine isn't a precise science. Unforeseen complications arise, particularly with pediatric cancer patients. Daniels considered Ranger's regular response to Winters. His partner wasn't signaling a narcotics diversion. The behavior would have been clearly distinct. This indicated something else. Something Ranger had been trained to recognize, but Daniels had yet to determine. Could I see footage of Winters preparing medications? He inquired. Wong retrieved several video clips displaying the nurse within the medication preparation room. Her procedure seemed impeccable, with double-checking of dosages, thorough documentation, and adherence to all established protocols. However, something about her actions gave Daniels the impression it was staged, as though she was acutely aware of being watched. What's located in the lower compartment of the medication carts? Daniels inquired, observing that Winters sometimes went to this area outside the camera's view. These were typically personal items. Hospital policy permits nurses to keep a backup set of scrubs, lunch, and personal belongings, none related to medical supplies. Afterward, that evening, Daniels stationed himself and Ranger close to the nurse's station as shift change neared. Nurse Winters came out of a patient's room, appearing professional but tired after 12 hours of work. When she saw them, a brief expression crossed her face. A moment of caution preceded her regaining composure. Officer Daniels, we meet again. Her smile appeared sincere, but didn't fully reach her eyes. Your partner seems exceptionally alert tonight. As if validating her comment, Ranger's stance grew rigid, his attention fixed on her medication cart instead of on Winters himself. Daniels noticed the difference. A long shift? He inquired casually. It was a challenging one, she responded. We lost Ethan on April 12th this afternoon. She succumbed to terminal leukemia, though the passing occurred more swiftly than anticipated. Her voice conveyed appropriate compassion, and her expression was carefully managed to project professional concern, avoiding overt emotion. I'm sorry to hear that, Daniels said, observing her intently. Was it anticipated? A brief hardening flickered in her eyes. In pediatric oncology, officer, death is invariably expected. The only factors are when and how. She looked at her watch. Please excuse me, I need to finish my documentation prior to the handoff. As she departed, Nurse Chun from the following shift came forward, observing Winters' departing form with a concerned look. Another patient? She inquired of Daniels softly. A boy in room April 12th, he confirmed. Winters stated that it was a terminal case. Chen's expression grew serious. Ethan had been responding favorably to his new treatment protocol last week. His lab results had been improving. She shook her head. Within the field of oncology, one becomes accustomed to managing expectations regarding patient outcomes. However, occasionally, the results defy explanation. How frequently does that occur? Daniels inquired, adopting a relaxed manner. Chun paused, displaying evident discomfort. Medicine isn't always predictable, particularly when dealing with pediatric cancer, she stated softly. But candidly, it appears to happen more often during Abby's work periods. The other nurses have observed this as well, though no one wishes to voice their concerns. Her records are consistently impeccable, and her procedures are technically faultless. As Chun moved to commence her shift, Daniels knelt beside Ranger, who remained attentive to the path Winters had taken. What are you detecting, boy? He murmured, gently stroking behind the dog's ears. What isn't she revealing? He remembered Ranger's advanced training, extending beyond routine narcotics identification. The canine unit possessed certification in detecting chemical adulterants, substances introduced into medications that would not be identified during routine inventory assessments. This specialized capability arose following an incident involving a hospital staff member suspected of tampering with patient medications. The possibility deeply concerned Daniels. If Winters were somehow altering medications instead of misappropriating them, it would clarify both Ranger's atypical alert responses and the concerning patient outcome data. Furthermore, Daniels suspected events far more serious than drug theft were occurring at Memorial General. He needed proof beyond data and animal reactions before presenting such a significant concern to hospital leadership. Charging their leading nurse necessitated undeniable certainty, so Daniels resolved to request security camera installation in unmonitored zones, particularly focusing on the medication preparation room during winter shifts. The overnight shift at Memorial General operated with a distinct pace compared to the daytime shift. Fewer staff members, lower lighting, and the quietness of the essential personnel fostered an environment where observations were more pronounced. Daniels had specifically asked for the night shift to monitor Nurse Winters, who had changed to the night rotation for the week. They situated themselves carefully close to the central monitoring station, allowing them to observe without drawing immediate attention. He told the inquisitive desk attendant that they were conducting a night shift security audit. We're evaluating protocols across all time periods, he explained. At precisely 2:17 a.m., Winters appeared at the far end of the corridor, pushing her medication cart with practiced efficiency. She moved with a confident and familiar air, her steps purposeful as she entered the room of a new patient, 8-year-old Michael Torres, recently admitted with an aggressive form of lymphoma. Ranger's reaction was immediate and intense. His muscles tensed, ears forward, eyes locked on Winters' cart as she disappeared into the room. Daniels had observed this behavior consistently enough to trust it without question. He whispered to the security attendant, "Wait here." He needed to observe the medication preparation room. With practiced stealth, Daniels positioned himself where he could see into the medication room adjacent to the nurse's station. The transparent walls allowed staff supervision while providing a controlled environment for drug preparation. 3 minutes later, Winters emerged from Michael's room and headed directly to this preparation area. Her actions were deliberate as she logged into the medication system, retrieved several vials, and began preparing what appeared to be a standard treatment protocol. Nothing in her actions seemed out of the ordinary. She double-checked dosages, documented each step, and adhered to standard procedures with textbook precision. Then, glancing quickly around the quiet floor, she reached beneath her scrub top and removed a small cosmetic bag from an inner pocket. With practiced efficiency, she unzipped it and removed a small vial holding a clear liquid. The vial lacked a pharmacy label and a tracking barcode, a significant breach of protocol. Daniels held his breath, observing as Winters carefully added several drops from this unauthorized vial to Michael's medication bag. Her movements were quick and confident, revealing a routine she had performed repeatedly. She placed the vial back into her cosmetic bag, carefully securing it, and continued her documentation as if everything was normal. The whole process took under 20 seconds. Winters completed her documentation, seeming entirely calm as she got ready to administer the altered medication to her patient. As she turned to leave, she stopped short. Rangers was positioned in the hallway, his focused attention fixed on her medication cart, with Daniels close behind. A fleeting, cold expression crossed her face before her professional demeanor returned. "Officer Daniels working late tonight?" He responded calmly, observing her placement between him and the medication. "Preparing treatment for Michael Torres?" She replied, her voice even, though her eyes remained cautious. "Is there something I can assist you with?" Daniels indicated the medication bag. "I observed you added something from a personal vial. That isn't standard procedure, is it?" The question lingered between them. For a brief moment, Winters' professionalism seemed to falter, her fingers subtly tightening on the bag. She then offered a smile, a familiar, assured look that had probably deflected doubt on numerous occasions. "You must be incorrect. Everything I've prepared originates from pharmacy stock. Please feel free to review the documentation." She presented her tablet, which accurately documented all medications, with no record of the unauthorized addition. "Rangers appears quite interested in your cart," Daniels noted, observing his partner's watchful stance. "He's specifically trained to identify substances not permitted in hospital environments." Winters' face grew stern. "Officer Daniels, these medications have strict time constraints. My patient requires them to be administered according to the prescribed schedule." She attempted to move past him, but Daniels adjusted his stance, remaining in place. "I'd like to see what's in your personal cosmetic bag," he stated softly. "That would be an invasion of privacy," she responded promptly. "Unless you have a warrant or specific hospital authorization, my personal belongings are protected. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a patient waiting." Their confrontation was broken up by the night nursing supervisor. "Is there a problem here?" Winters immediately adopted a concerned expression. "Michael's medication was getting delayed. I had just been explaining to Officer Daniels that timing is critical for chemotherapy protocols." Daniels made a split-second decision. Without immediate evidence, he couldn't prevent her from administering the medication, but he could ensure it was verified first. "I have observed a potential protocol violation. I would like pharmacy to verify this medication before administration." The supervisor looked startled. "This is quite unexpected during a shift. Introducing unapproved components to patient medications is also concerning," Daniels stated, observing Winters' reaction closely. "Hospital regulations allow security personnel to ask for confirmation if there's a suspicion of alteration." The term alteration created a palpable unease in the hallway. The supervisor's demeanor changed from uncertainty to worry. "Nurse Winters should have the pharmacy review this. I will personally deliver it to them." Winters argued that it was unnecessary, her composure beginning to falter. "The medication will degrade if not administered promptly," she stated. "Then we'll prepare a fresh dose while pharmacy analyzes this one," the supervisor responded firmly, taking the bag. "Protocol is clear when tampering is alleged." Winters' eyes shifted between them, calculations seeming to struggle beneath her careful expression. This is ridiculous. I've done nothing wrong. She retreated, her hand moving reflexively towards the pocket holding her cosmetic bag. Don't, Daniels said softly. Ranger approached, his training clear in his focused awareness. I'd like you to empty your pockets, Nurse Winters. I do not consent to a search, she responded, her voice firm. This is harassment. The supervisor stepped in. Abby, to expedite this, would you be willing to show us what's in your pockets? Then we can all return to our tasks. Winters paused, appearing to weigh her options. Then, carefully, she took out her hospital ID, a pen, and her cell phone. Satisfied? She asked, her voice devoid of warmth. However, Daniels had noticed the faint shape of a cosmetic bag beneath her scrubs. There's something else, Daniels stated. The bag you used before. At that moment, Winters' demeanor shifted. Her composed facade vanished, exposing a calculating and cold look underneath. I want to speak with hospital administration and my union representative. I will not continue this discussion without legal representation. The supervisor appeared increasingly concerned. Abby, please just display the bag to allow us to proceed. Michael requires his medication. Then, prepare a fresh dose, Winters stated, her carefully controlled composure visibly deteriorating. I am not participating in this line of questioning. Daniels reached for his radio. I request security be dispatched to the pediatric oncology medication preparation area. There is a possible medication tampering situation in progress. Within minutes, security personnel arrived, followed shortly by the on-call hospital administrator. As the situation escalated, Winters became increasingly defensive, declining to show the contents of her cosmetic bag or permit examination of her medication cart. I want these accusations documented, she insisted. My record is spotless. My patients receive exemplary care. It's important that we verify the medications you've prepared, the administrator said, instructing security to secure the medication cart and preparation area, treating them as potential evidence. Daniels then quietly spoke to the administrator. I need authorization for hidden cameras in the medication room and preservation of tonight's footage. I believe Nurse Winters has been tampering with patient medications for some time. The seriousness of the accusation became palpable. Should the allegations be substantiated, it would signify a devastating failure of confidence and possibly several instances of patient harm. The administrator acknowledged the severity of the situation with a somber nod. As Winters proceeded to the administrative offices, her gaze locked with Daniels, conveying a disturbing intensity. He observed the absence of fear. Instead, he detected only calculation and a more unsettling element that evoked a palpable chill. Ranger's earlier warnings proved accurate. The contents of that cosmetic bag were clearly not intended to aid patient recovery. By 6 a.m., the hospital conference room had been converted into a temporary command center. Digital displays showed security camera recordings, medication records, and patient files as a serious-looking group of hospital administrators, security staff, and police examined the information. Daniels was positioned close to the doorway. Ranger stood watch beside him as the hospital's chief of medicine replayed the security footage for the third time. There, Dr. Harrison stated, pausing the image. That is not standard procedure. The display showed Nurse Winters in the medication preparation room 3 nights earlier. She looked around, verifying her solitude, and then removed a small vial from her cosmetic bag. She worked with practiced efficiency, adding drops of an unknown substance to an 4 bag, carefully returning the vial to her bag, and then proceeding with documentation as if nothing unusual had occurred. The security director reported identifying 12 separate instances of this behavior over the past week. Scrolling through time-stamped images, these incidents always occurred during night shifts, and always when she believed no one was watching. Hospital Administrator Patricia Goldman rubbed her fingertips against her temples. The patient in this footage is Emma Reyes, located in room 409. What occurred to her following the medication administration? Pediatric oncologist, consulting his tablet, stated that she experienced unexplained tachycardia and respiratory distress roughly 40 minutes post-administration. We initially believed it was attributable to a reaction to her chemotherapy protocol. And did she recover? Goldman inquired, her voice strained. The oncologist's expression grew somber. Ultimately, she needed intensive care and experienced disruptions to her treatment timeline. Daniels observed their reactions as the meaning became clear. The first shock had faded, replaced by dread as more information emerged. This wasn't a case of unauthorized drug use for personal gain or financial benefit. It was intentional harm to a patient. What about the contents of the cosmetic bag? Dr. Harrison asked, addressing the police detective who had joined them. The lab is expediting the analysis, Detective Morales stated. Initial findings suggest a compound that imitates signs of infection in the bloodstream. In effect, it deceives the body, triggering an inflammatory reaction that mirrors sepsis. A palpable silence descended upon the room. The discovery was more unsettling than straightforward drug theft. This represented deliberate harm targeted at vulnerable children. How could we have overlooked this? Goldman questioned, her usual professional demeanor faltering. She has been with us for only 18 months. Her references were excellent. We've contacted Chicago Memorial, Morales explained. They have no record of an Abigail Winters ever being employed there. This revelation was significant. Falsified credentials, deliberate patient harm. The case was growing beyond anything they had initially suspected. What about patient outcomes during her employment? Daniels inquired. Beyond the incidents we've identified this week? The pediatric oncologist tapped his tablet, displaying a statistical analysis. We've identified 27 patients who experienced unexpected complications during Nurse Winters' shifts. 9 of those children died. His voice faltered. Deaths that were attributed to complications of their cancer or treatment. Dr. Harrison slammed her hand against the table. She's been hurting them deliberately, all this time, and we never suspected. She turned to Daniels. How did your dog know? What did he detect that our entire medical and security staff missed? Daniels looked down at Ranger, whose training and instincts had started the investigation. Ranger was initially trained for pharmaceutical detection, but he received further certification in chemical adulterants. He was identifying the foreign substance she was adding to the medications, something that wouldn't show up in your standard inventory controls. Where is Winters now? Goldman asked. In custody, Morales replied. A warrant was secured utilizing the available security footage. The district attorney is formulating charges, including at least multiple counts of assault, with the possibility of attempted murder contingent on the laboratory analysis determining her intent. A security technician entered the room, presenting a tablet to the security director. Sir, we have accessed Winters' locker. You must view this. The director's complexion changed as he reviewed the images. She maintained records, comprehensive notes regarding patient reactions, timestamps, and dosages. He looked up, visibly shaken, and displayed photographs of the children taken during their distress events. The revelation sent a chill through the room. This wasn't opportunistic behavior, it was methodical, documented, and calculated harm. We need to check her previous employment, Morales stated. If she falsified her credentials here, she likely did it elsewhere. There could be more victims. And we need to review every patient currently under her care, Dr. Harrison added. Some patients may still have contaminated medications in their systems or IVs. Goldman nodded, the burden of responsibility clear on her face. I'll authorize emergency blood work for all patients who received care from Winters in the past week and will need to notify families. She hesitated, the seriousness of the situation becoming apparent. How do we inform parents that someone they trusted with their children's lives was intentionally inflicting harm? A silence returned to the room as the question remained without a response. Daniels recalled the children he had observed during his patrols, already struggling with severe illnesses, their young bodies fighting cancer, and then being subjected to further harm by someone in a position of responsibility. What could have driven her? The pediatric oncologist inquired eventually. Was it money? Drugs? A form of excitement? Morales reviewed his notes. The contents of her locker and her responses during the initial interview suggest what psychological profilers identify as medical deception disorder, previously referred to as Munchausen by proxy. She appeared to gain satisfaction from fabricating medical emergencies and subsequently participating in or witnessing the reactions to them. But these weren't her children, Dr. Harrison pointed out. The understanding of this disorder has changed, Morales clarified. In certain situations, especially within medical environments, some perpetrators direct their actions toward patients instead of family members. The motivation can stem from the satisfaction of participating in an emergency response, appearing skilled during a crisis, or simply from exerting dominance over vulnerable individuals. As more details emerged, Daniels received a text message from the evidence technicians examining Winter's apartment. The journals discovered contained documentation covering more than 5 years. Past employment history shows records from 3 other hospitals, with a recurring pattern observed at each location. Winter's actions were escalating rapidly, indicating a years-long history of patient harm across multiple facilities. Her technique, involving the administration of substances that resembled natural illness complications, enabled her to avoid detection, progressing from hospital to hospital as concerns might have started to arise. Until a Belgian Malinois with specialized training detected what humans had missed. Goldman stood, her decision made. We will implement full transparency protocol. All affected families will be notified today. We will contact regulatory agencies and previous employers immediately, and we will implement emergency medication verification protocols for all pediatric patients. She turned to Daniels and Ranger. If you hadn't trusted your partner's instincts, this could have continued indefinitely. Ranger remained watchful next to Daniels, not realizing the significance of the discovery his specialized training revealed. For him, it was merely detection work, identifying an anomalous substance. For the children in the oncology unit, it represented a crucial difference, a reprieve from further suffering and an opportunity to concentrate entirely on recovery. The pediatric oncology floor underwent a complete overnight transformation. Law enforcement personnel were positioned at key locations within the hallway. Forensic specialists carefully examined the pharmacy, and hospital security personnel diligently monitored each patient's room. Relatives, who had gathered following urgent notifications from the hospital, clustered in smaller groups, their expressions reflecting a blend of apprehension and anger, while hospital officials detailed the unfolding events. Daniels and Ranger continued to be positioned close to the main nurses' station, observing how Detective Morales managed the expanding inquiry. The district attorney authorized charges given the substantial proof. However, they required Winter's complete confession to grasp the extent of her actions. She stayed in an administrative conference room, being watched, and had declined to speak further unless her lawyer was there. 6 active 4 bags have been confirmed to contain adulterants, according to a report from the hospital pharmacist, who presented the tablet displaying laboratory results, all prepared by Winters within the last 48 hours. The affected bags have been replaced, and blood samples have been taken from each patient to determine exposure levels. Morales nodded grimly. Regarding the substance itself, the pharmacist explained that it is a sophisticated compound which triggers inflammatory markers. This method essentially mimics the body's response to infection without being detectable in standard toxicology screens. The symptoms appear as complications of the underlying cancer or side effects of treatment. As Daniels observed, she knew exactly what she was doing. A disturbance near the elevators drew their attention. A man in an expensive suit had arrived, immediately demanding to see Nurse Winters. The attorney's arrival signaled the start of the investigation's next stage, a formal interrogation that could potentially expose the complete scope of Winter's actions. Officer Daniels, Morales stated, "I need you and Ranger present for this interview. Her reaction to your dog might elicit responses we wouldn't otherwise obtain." They proceeded to the conference room where Winters was being held. She appeared remarkably composed, her posture stiff, hands arranged precisely on the table before her. The slight lines around her mouth were the only indication of any stress. As Ranger entered the room, her gaze immediately found him. A brief, fleeting expression, perhaps hatred, perhaps fear, crossed her face before she regained her composure. "Ms. Winters," Morales began after the introductions were finished, "we have confirmed the presence of foreign substances and medications you prepared. Substances causing patients to experience life-threatening symptoms have been identified. We have recovered your journals detailing patient reactions comprehensively. Your guilt is now undeniable. Her attorney attempted to object, but Winters quieted him with a subtle motion. What precisely am I being accused of, detective? Providing excellent care to terminally ill children? Remaining with them during their most challenging times? Daniels interrupted, visibly repulsed, unable to hold back his words about the deliberate infliction of suffering on children already battling cancer. Winters' gaze moved towards him, sharp and assessing. A compelling suggestion. Can you demonstrate intent? Morales presented a tablet, displaying a video compilation of security footage that showed her repeatedly adding unauthorized substances to medications. Your own records establish intent, Ms. Winters. Detailed notes regarding dosages, timing, and anticipated reactions were present. Photographs of suffering children were also included. Then, a subtle shift occurred in her expression. It wasn't remorse, but rather a professional disappointment at being uncovered. She briefly looked at Ranger, who kept his watchful stance, his training clearly visible in his controlled alertness. The dog, she stated eventually. That's where I erred. I conducted a thorough investigation of the hospital's security protocols, taking into consideration cameras, inventory controls, and witness routines. However, I did not foresee a specially trained canine. A small, chilling smile touched her lips. A miscalculation on my part. Her attorney appeared alarmed. Abigail, I advise you to cease speaking. It is fine, Richard, she interjected calmly. The evidence is complete. I acknowledge a checkmate when I see one. She leaned forward slightly. You desire to understand why. As expected, Morales stated, switching on the recording equipment on the table. Winters' demeanor stayed unruffled as she proceeded with her speech, her tone professional and distant. Medicine involves control. The misconception that we can manage the unpredictable nature of failing human biology. Most healthcare professionals overestimate their influence. I chose to accept a different form of control. By harming children, Daniels questioned, his hand automatically moving to Ranger's shoulder. She explained, as if outlining a basic principle, that by establishing scenarios she could anticipate and control, she mitigated the feeling of urgent intervention, the parents' relief when their child unexpectedly improved, and the admiration of colleagues for handling difficult cases. Her expression remained unsettlingly calm. There's power in that instant when life and death are poised delicately, and you alone determine the outcome. Her revelation caused a palpable shift in the atmosphere. This was not a crime driven by emotion or need. It was a deliberate, ongoing infliction of harm for personal psychological satisfaction. How many? Morales inquired softly. How many children have you harmed? Winters inclined her head a little, pausing to think. Hurt is open to interpretation, detective. Many were already facing life-threatening conditions. I merely hastened or complicated their paths, she responded, shrugging. I've been employed at 7 hospitals over the past 8 years. I seldom maintained exact records. The informality of her reply hit Daniels with the force of a physical blow. 7 hospitals, 8 years. The potential number of victims was staggering. Throughout the interview, Winters described her methods with the dispassionate accuracy of someone analyzing an academic case study, instead of recounting her own crimes against vulnerable children. She elaborated on how she chose victims, how she adjusted dosages to produce particular symptoms, and how she recorded responses for her personal records. And the deaths? Morales persisted. What about the children who did not survive your interventions? For the first time, Winters displayed a visible emotional reaction. It wasn't regret, but rather something akin to professional pride. Those cases offered distinct learning opportunities. The boundary between crisis and catastrophe is compelling to analyze. Her lawyer subsequently stepped in, understanding the detrimental effect her words were having. However, the harm had already occurred. Winters' admission guaranteed she would be barred from healthcare employment and would likely face decades in prison, potentially for the rest of her life. As preparations were made to transfer her to police custody, Winters paused near Daniels and Ranger. Remarkable animal, she noted clinically. What specific compound was he trained to detect? Justice, Daniels replied concisely, Observing officers escort her away in handcuffs. 21 days following Abigail Winters' arrest, Memorial General Hospital held a private meeting for the families impacted by her actions. The spacious conference room was occupied by parents, whose children had suffered unforeseen complications during their cancer treatments, complications now recognized as the consequence of intentional manipulation, instead of the normal progression of their illnesses. Hospital Administrator Dr. Patricia Goldman addressed the gathered families, her usual confident appearance softened by the seriousness of her role. There are no words sufficient to convey our grief over the events that occurred within our facility, she began. We did not fulfill our essential obligation to safeguard vulnerable patients entrusted to our care. Daniels stood at the back of the room with Ranger beside him. Several families specifically requested their presence to thank the K-9 officer who had uncovered Winters' actions. Goldman detailed the hospital's extensive response, including new medication protocols, enhanced security measures, and psychological support for affected patients. Daniels noted the spectrum of feelings present in the room: grief, anger, relief, and the distinct, troubled look on the faces of parents reflecting on every challenging instance their child had endured during treatment. The investigation has verified 19 instances of intentional medication tampering at our facility, Goldman stated, her voice remaining composed despite the troubling news she was conveying. Customized treatment plans have been created for the children who survived these events, designed to handle any potential long-term consequences. For the children who were lost, her voice faltered, we cannot undo this, but we pledge to provide support in any way possible. A father in the front row stood, his face etched with grief and anger. My daughter, Sophie, passed away during what you termed a crisis event on Winters' shift 3 months ago. She had been recovering prior to that night. His voice trembled. How can I ever trust a hospital again? How can any of us? The room fell silent, the question unanswered until a small voice from the doorway eased the tension. Officer Ranger helped me get better. Everyone's attention focused as Michael Torres, 8 years old, was wheeled into the room by his mother. The boy, whose altered medication had been stopped the night of Winters' arrest, appeared pale but resolute, with an 4-pole beside his wheelchair. He indicated Ranger directly. The police dog understood the medicine was incorrect. That's what my doctor explained. Michael offered a faint smile. He's a hero dog. The uncomplicated declaration from a child appeared to alter the atmosphere in the room. Families started recounting their experiences, detailing instances where their children had faced unexplained difficulties, now illuminated by Winters' admission. The shared trauma was evident, yet so was the comfort of realizing these events weren't arbitrary misfortunes or shortcomings in medical understanding. Following the close of the formal meeting, Daniels was approached by numerous parents eager to meet Ranger. Many expressed their gratitude, often tearfully, for his faith in his partner's instincts, especially given the absence of clear warning signs. The hospital's pediatric psychologist had proposed that an encounter with Ranger could be beneficial for the children, offering a way to work through their experiences by centering on the canine who had apprehended the person who harmed them. While children gently stroked Ranger under Daniel's watchful guidance, Detective Morales spoke to him privately regarding developments in the investigation. The case is broadening, Morales stated softly. We're certain Winters was employed at hospitals in 4 states, consistently within pediatric units, always involving vulnerable patients. 3 additional hospitals have restarted inquiries into unusual patient fatalities during her time with them. What is the total number of victims? Daniels observed, noticing how Ranger calmly received affection from a delicate girl whose arms showed marks from many 4 lines. We might never know the precise number, Morales confessed. Her journals cover a span of 6 years, but we believe her actions started during nursing school. A cautious assessment suggests more than 50 children were harmed, with at least 17 deaths that can be clearly linked to her actions. The extent of Winters' crimes proved hard to grasp. A campaign spanning years, masked by a veneer of professionalism, had, according to her initial psychological evaluation, presented a clear example of what clinicians now recognized as medical deception disorder, a pathological compulsion to fabricate and manage medical emergencies to fulfill profound psychological needs for control, recognition, and affirmation. The prosecutors expressed assurance, and Daniels inquired, Morales affirmed. Her admission by itself would suffice. The combination of physical evidence, documentation, and witness statements suggests she faces multiple life sentences. She will not be able to work in healthcare again, nor will she have access to vulnerable patients. A small hand tugged at Daniel's uniform pants. Michael Torres looked up at him from his wheelchair, his eyes serious, beyond his years. Officer Daniels, can Ranger visit me sometimes when I have treatments? My mom says he might be allowed as a therapy dog. Daniels knelt to the boy's level. That could potentially be arranged. Ranger is quite remarkable. He's received training as both a detection dog and a therapy dog. Michael nodded gravely. He was aware that the problematic nurse was harming children when others were not. Perhaps he can offer some comfort now. This straightforward request summarized everything about the case that had impacted Daniels so profoundly. Children battling serious illnesses had encountered an extra, concealed threat from someone in a position of trust. Despite such a deep breach of trust, solace could still be found in the presence of a dog whose specialized training and unwavering instincts revealed the truth. As the families slowly left, Dr. Goldman spoke to Daniels. We are establishing a K-9 screening program for all pediatric medications, she explained. Your department has consented to assist in training our security personnel. Cannot reverse the past, but it may avert comparable incidents going forward. Daniels nodded, observing Ranger's careful interaction with the last child. I'm just doing what I was trained to do, he said softly, detecting substances that shouldn't be present. Goldman countered, no, you both accomplished something far more significant. You prioritized intuition over surface impressions. Everyone perceived Winters as an exemplary nurse. You recognized her true nature, because you listened to your partner when he expressed concern. At that instant, observing Ranger's gaze directed upwards, filled with complete trust, Daniels grasped the profound strength of the K-9 handler bond, a partnership founded on reciprocal respect and steadfast belief in each other's capabilities. Collaboratively, they had exposed a predator concealed in an ordinary environment, concluding a sequence of incidents that could have persisted without intervention. Have you ever observed an animal detect something humans overlooked? Animals frequently exhibit remarkable instincts, capable of sensing things we cannot. Please share your experiences in the comments section. What are your opinions regarding hospitals utilizing K-9 security units? Do you believe more healthcare facilities should incorporate service dogs to enhance both security and patient well-being? We value your input. Considering the scenario, if you were Officer Daniels, would you have relied on your K-9 partner's warnings, even when all others defended Nurse Winters' reputation? Occasionally, relying on our intuition or our partner's intuition can make a significant impact. Thank you for watching today's remarkable K-9 story. If you enjoyed learning about Ranger's life-saving work, remember to subscribe and enable notifications by clicking the bell icon to ensure you don't miss our uploads every Tuesday and Friday. Check out these other inspiring K-9 hero stories appearing on your screen now. We appreciate you watching. Please share this video with those who recognize the remarkable connection between handlers and their K-9 partners. Until next time, remain safe, understanding these four-legged heroes are working diligently to safeguard us all. The funeral was silent, heavy with grief until the police dog acted. He jumped onto his handler's casket, and his subsequent actions left the entire room in tears. Here's what happened. But before we get into today's story, drop a comment below telling us where in the world you're watching from. And if you love extraordinary police dog stories like this one, make sure to hit that subscribe button. You won't want to miss what's coming next. The October morning arrived gray and somber, as if the sky reflected the sadness of those assembled at Oakwood Memorial Chapel. A cool breeze stirred the nearby maple trees, their crimson leaves sometimes detaching to briefly swirl, before landing on the gravel pathway where numerous police cruisers were arranged in precise formation. Within the chapel, the atmosphere was thick with the combined fragrances of polished wood, floral displays, and the palpable stress of shared sorrow. Officers in dress blues occupied the pews, their badges adorned with black mourning bands. Their faces, typically hardened by years of service, visibly strained to remain composed as they observed the flag-draped casket at the room's front. Officer Michael Mike Reeves, 34 years old and an 8-year veteran of the Riverside Police Department, a recipient of 2 commendations for bravery, rested silently within the wooden box. An official portrait, positioned on an easel next to the casket, depicted a man with keen hazel eyes and a gentle smile that didn't fully convey a solemn demeanor. In the front row, Mike's parents were seated, visibly burdened by the sorrow of outliving their son. His mother held a handkerchief, while his father, a former officer, gazed forward. Next to them, Mike's sister Elaine dabbed at tears that appeared unending, her shoulders shaking with each inhale. Near the side entrance, a disturbance caught the attention of several people. Officer Terrence Wilson worked to manage a Belgian Malinois, whose strong physique trembled with anticipation. The dog's golden-brown eyes moved quickly around the chapel, examining every face and every area, as if looking for someone expected to be present. "Easy, Ranger," Wilson said softly, tightening his hold on the leash as the dog made a low, mournful sound. Ranger had been Mike's partner for 4 years. Working as a team, they had located missing children, arrested dangerous suspects, and uncovered hidden contraband that could have gone unnoticed. They were the K-9 unit's most accomplished team. Now Ranger's ears twitched, his nose working intensely, showing uncertainty in his posture. 4 years prior, Officer Mike Reeves had been in the impersonal hallway of the Regional K-9 Training Center, anxiously straightening his uniform collar. Following 6 years of patrol work, he received approval for the K-9 unit, a goal he'd held since his academy days. The training sergeant, a stern woman named Martinez with 20 years of experience visible on her face, guided him towards the kennels. She cautioned him, her keys making noise as they walked, not to become too attached too quickly. He would work with 3 prospects before final assignments were made. Some partnerships succeed, others fail. The dog's choice is as important as your own. A lively atmosphere filled the kennel area. German Shepherds, Belgian Malinois, and Dutch Shepherds were watchful in their enclosures. Martinez paused at the 3rd kennel, where a tan Malinois with distinctive facial markings stood rigidly at attention, amber eyes following every movement. "This is Ranger, 18 months old, imported from a European working line," Martinez said, observing Mike's reaction. "He has a high drive, high intelligence, and could be too intense for some handlers." A prior candidate found him unmanageable, describing him as too intense. Mike lowered himself to the dog's level, keeping eye contact. Typically, police dogs displayed immediate enthusiasm or aggression upon approach, but Ranger was an exception. He stayed perfectly still, evaluating Mike with a disconcerting intensity, as if peering directly through him. "Hey there, partner," Mike said gently. At those words, a slight alteration appeared in Ranger's stance. A minor change that only Martinez detected, his eyebrows lifting a little. The dog moved toward the kennel gate with careful steps, paused once to sniff at Mike's offered hand, then settled, holding eye contact. "Well," Martinez said, "that's certainly not what I expected." The bond was instant, though neither person nor dog could articulate it. When they started training together the following day, the other handlers observed in amazement as Ranger seemed to predict Mike's instructions almost before he voiced them. By the 3rd week, Martinez discontinued the rotations, formally assigning pairs. Their initial significant challenge arose 6 months later, a missing 10-year-old child in Oakwood Park. The search had been ongoing for hours, with numerous agencies searching the thick woodland as night fell and temperatures decreased. Mike observed Ranger assessing the scene, tracking a scent trail that other canines had overlooked. "He's detected something," Mike transmitted to the command post. "We are proceeding east towards the creek bed." Rain had begun to fall, washing away scent particles, but Ranger never hesitated. He led Mike through thickets and over fallen trees until they found the boy, huddled beneath an overhanging embankment, hypothermic but alive. Their partnership extended beyond statistics. Mike had remained single, his apartment becoming their shared domain. Morning runs continued regardless of weather. Evenings were spent reinforcing training exercises that had become more like games, their lives completely intertwined. Mike's parents had thoughtfully provided Ranger with a Christmas stocking, acknowledging him as part of the family. The 911 call was received at 2:34 a.m. on Thursday, reporting a domestic disturbance on Elm Street, a residential area of modest single-family homes. Dispatch records indicated this was the third call originating from that address within the past 2 months, with prior incidents resolved without any arrests. Officer Chun was already en route, requesting additional support as per standard protocol. K9-7 was ready to assist, as Mike had radioed, with Ranger alert in the specialized compartment behind him. Acknowledged K9-7. The report indicated a male subject, possibly armed, with children present in the home. Mike's cruiser arrived approximately half a block from the address, maintaining dark lights to minimize the risk of escalation. Chen's patrol car was already on scene, positioned strategically to provide cover. Mike secured Ranger's tactical harness, and the dog instantly transitioned to working mode. Report, what is the situation? Mike, she said as they neared Chun, who was positioned behind her vehicle door, hand on her holster. The male subject was identified as Jacob Reynolds, age 42. His wife had initiated the call, stating he had been consuming alcohol and had begun threatening her with a handgun when she announced her intention to leave him. 2 children were present inside the residence, aged 8 and 5. The house appeared dark, with only a single light illuminating the living room. Abruptly, the front door swung open, and a woman emerged, holding 2 children, all still in pajamas. "He's got a gun," she gasped, as Chen directed them towards the patrol cars. He stated he wasn't returning to jail. A records check verified Reynolds had previous arrests for assault and unlawful possession of a firearm. The situation had progressed from a domestic disturbance to a potential armed standoff. Reinforcements were on the way, estimated time of arrival 4 minutes. Dispatch updated, SWAT alerted but assembling. "We might not have 4 minutes," Mike responded, observing movement at the window. The subject appeared increasingly agitated. Additional patrol units arrived, officers taking positions around the perimeter. Mike released Ranger's leash, giving him a hand signal to stay close, a command that would keep the dog within 3 feet without restricting his movement. They proceeded to the side of the house, utilizing shadows for cover. "Got a visual," Mike reported quietly into his shoulder. Mike's subject in living room, confirmed armed, handgun in right hand, appears highly agitated. Captain Walsh's voice crackled over the radio. "Hold positions."
Ostage négociateur en route.
Reynolds, however, disregarded the order. The front door exploded inward. A figure appeared against the light within, weapon raised. "Stay back," he yelled, swinging the gun haphazardly between officers. Reynolds discharged a stray shot that struck Chen's patrol car. Officers retreated behind cover, issuing verbal instructions but refraining from firing due to the family's location behind vehicles. Reynolds moved down the front steps. One now pointed directly at the group, including his wife and children. Mike assessed the situation instantly. Reynolds had an unobstructed view of his family. Officers lacked a secure vantage point, and the man's finger was closing on the trigger. Mike gave Ranger the silent command they'd practiced repeatedly. 2 quick taps on his thigh, indicating an apprehension attack. Ranger surged forward with explosive speed, a tan blur in the darkness. At the same time, Mike moved to flank, positioning himself between Reynolds and his intended targets. Reynolds noticed the dog approaching and redirected his weapon towards the new danger. 2 shots echoed through the night. Ranger connected with Reynolds' arm, the expertly trained bite causing the man to drop his weapon. Both men went down, but Reynolds managed to fire first, with a bullet impacting Mike's chest just beneath his vest. A second shot followed from Mike's service weapon as he fell, hitting Reynolds in the shoulder, disabling him but not fatally. "Officer down! Officer down!" Chen's voice broke over the radio as she hurried to Mike, who had fallen onto the asphalt. Ranger kept his hold on Reynolds until another officer secured the suspect, then immediately moved away from the scene, a course of action he would not typically take, and rushed to Mike's side. The dog whined, pawing at his partner's chest where blood was quickly spreading across his uniform. "Stay with me, Reeves," Chen urged, applying pressure to the wound. "Bus is 2 minutes out." Mike's breathing came in shallow gasps, his eyes finding Ranger's. He whispered, "Good boy. lifting a shaking hand to touch the dog's head. Best partner ever. Ranger lay down beside him, pressing his body against Mike's side as paramedics arrived. They worked frantically, loading Mike into the ambulance, but the bullet had struck at an angle that sent it beneath the protective vest, severing a major artery. Officer Michael Reeves was pronounced dead at Riverside Memorial Hospital at 3:28 a.m. While emergency personnel desperately attempted resuscitation, Ranger stayed in the emergency room hallway, with Officer Wilson holding his leash. The dog's eyes remained fixed on the trauma bay doors. When the doctor finally came out, shaking his head, Ranger appeared to comprehend before any words were spoken. His body drooped, the confident stance faltering as a howl began, a sound so intense, so resembling human sorrow, that seasoned emergency staff averted their gaze. Inside the chapel, the funeral service had commenced. Chief Roberts moved to the podium, his usual strong demeanor tempered by sorrow. Officer Michael Reeves represented the epitome of what it means to serve in the badge. He began to speak, his resonant voice firm despite the emotion evident in his eyes. During his 8 years of service, he demonstrated consistent courage, compassion, and dedication to this community. Nearby, Ranger's restlessness grew. Wilson held the leash securely, yet the dog's attention remained fixed, focused on the casket where his partner rested. The chief noted that Mike's devotion to his canine partner, Ranger, had forged one of the most successful teams in our department. Together, they were credited with over 200 successful operations, saving countless lives and enhancing the safety of our community. Mike's mother wept softly, comforted by her husband's embrace. His sister Elaine remained stiffly beside them, sometimes touching the canine unit pin Mike had given her last Christmas. Captain Walsh then stepped to the podium, recounting a memory of Mike's first day on patrol. He arrived 30 minutes early, his uniform so impeccably pressed it appeared it could have cut paper. Walsh remembered, prompting a few sorrowful smiles. When I inquired about his promptness, he stated, "My dad always told me if you're on time, you're already late." Mike consistently exceeded expectations. As personal recollections transitioned into the official ceremony, Ranger displayed increasing signs of distress. The dog breathed rapidly, adjusting his posture, and kept his gaze fixed on the casket. Wilson worked to manage the situation, understanding the importance of the moment, yet obligated to ensure order throughout the service. The department chaplain commenced the religious segment of the service, his words of comfort seeming inadequate given the sight of a flag-draped casket and a room filled with grief. Though Officer Reeves walks through the valley of the shadow of death, he fears no evil, the chaplain stated. At these words, Ranger emitted a low whine that resonated through the quiet chapel, and several heads turned, with expressions of understanding rather than annoyance appearing on their faces. The service continued with the presentation of Mike's badge and service weapon to his parents. The department's bagpipe player moved to the front, the poignant melody of Amazing Grace echoing through the chapel. As the bagpipes ceased, a quiet stillness settled over the chapel. The funeral director walked to the podium, ready to provide directions for the procession to the cemetery. Prior to speaking, Ranger's demeanor changed significantly. The Belgian Malinois froze, his body trembling as if electrified. His eyes fixed on the casket widened. His breathing quickened, nostrils flaring as he perceived something only he could detect. Every muscle in his powerful frame tensed, coiling like a spring. "Something's wrong," Wilson whispered to Martinez, tightening his grip on the leash. "He's never acted like this before." Martinez recognized the signs. "That's not aggression," she whispered back. "That's recognition." At that moment, Ranger initiated his action with a swift advance that surprised Wilson. The dog broke free of the leash held by his handler. Multiple officers reacted to try and stop him, but Ranger was too quick. His actions were deliberate and purposeful as he sped down the central aisle. A collective intake of breath spread through the chapel as the Belgian Malinois moved toward the front, his paws making no sound on the carpeted floor. Mike's mother emitted a quiet cry, his father partially rising from his seat. Chief Roberts prepared to proceed, yet Ranger's behavior created a moment of hesitation for all present. It wasn't a display of hostility or fear, it was a sign of clear intention. Ranger approached the casket and halted, inhaling deeply around its sides. Then, with the same effortless skill that had distinguished him during his service, he jumped up, his front paws landing softly on the casket's rim. For a brief instant, he maintained his balance there, his amber eyes assessing the gathered mourners as if awaiting consent. There was no movement and no sound. A hush fell over the entire room. Ranger, with deliberate motions, pulled himself completely onto the casket, his nails producing the faintest clicking sound on the polished wood. The American flag covering the casket moved a little under his weight. The dog turned once, then positioned himself on top of the casket, directly above where Mike's chest would be. "Oh my God," Elaine whispered, tears flowing down her face. Ranger lowered his head, pressing his nose against the wood. He took a deep breath, then released it in a trembling exhale that appeared to hold all the grief imaginable. His ears pressed against his head as he whined, a sound so sorrowful it seemed to permeate the very walls. "Should I?" Wilson began, taking a tentative step forward. Captain Walsh raised a hand, halting him. "No," he said softly, "let him be." The dog's behavior shifted from active to observant. He assumed the familiar alert stance he had held many times in the patrol car, watchful, protective, prepared. His gaze moved across the room as if still performing his duties, still safeguarding his partner. Ranger remained perfectly still, his chest rising and falling in a pattern that appeared synchronized with an unseen power. The first shock among those grieving subsided into a deep silence, not distressing, but respectful. Then Ranger performed an action that shifted the moment from poignant to truly unforgettable. With deliberate slowness, he lifted his right paw and pressed it flat against the American flag, precisely over the spot where Mike's badge would be on his uniform. He maintained the position, unwavering, resolute, and clear. Elaine reacted with a gasp, her hand covering her mouth. "The salute," she breathed, her voice just audible to those close by. "That's Mike's special signal." A quiet buzz of conversation arose within the chapel, as those familiar with the meaning shared it with others. 3 years prior, Mike had developed a distinctive training cue with Ranger. It was a discreet signal, used exclusively between them, a customized gesture that Ranger would execute only in reaction to Mike's particular hand movement. This was not a component of regular police K-9 instruction. It was intimate, unique, and shared solely by them. Officer Chun, who was present the night Mike passed, moved closer to Captain Walsh. "Mike's last touch," she whispered, her voice cracking. Prior to the ambulance arrival, he touched Ranger's head in the manner he always used when issuing that command. It wasn't simply a gesture, Martinez explained softly to those present. It represented their method of conveying a message, signifying mission accomplishment when verbal communication was impossible. I have never observed another team exhibiting such a profound connection. As Ranger held the salute, his gaze remained steady and observant, as if anticipating additional direction. A profound quiet settled over the chapel, punctuated only by quiet weeping from Mike's family. Mike's father rose abruptly, his action capturing everyone's attention. The former officer moved toward the casket deliberately, maintaining a dignified posture despite the sadness visible on his face. He halted near Ranger, standing respectfully without touching the dog. Then, with careful control, he performed a formal police salute. "Mission accomplished, son," he said, his voice thick with feeling but audible in the still room. One by one, each uniformed officer in the chapel stood and repeated the gesture, a multitude of salutes recognizing not only their deceased comrade, but the connection they were observing. Even civilian mourners rose, palms on their chests, accepting something beyond common comprehension. Ranger maintained his posture for a few more seconds, then gradually lowered his paw. He adjusted his position near the casket, turning to look at Mike's father. The dog's ears rose, his keen eyes observing the man's face. "He was so proud to be your partner," Mike's father said to Ranger, his voice a quiet murmur. "Every day he told us how fortunate he was to have you." The chaplain, who had been observing with evident feeling, moved forward once more. "In 20 years of service to the department," he said, speaking to those present, "I have conducted far too many ceremonies like this one. I have never seen such a demonstration of the connection between an officer and his canine partner. He paused, regaining his composure. It seems there are relationships in this world that even death cannot break. The chaplain's words appeared to fill the chapel, offering solace where it had seemed impossible just before. Mike's mother, who had been almost devastated, stood a little straighter, her gaze fixed on Ranger. Mike frequently claimed the dog understood everything, she stated, in a voice audible to those around. He asserted Ranger could occasionally read his mind. She wiped her eyes with a handkerchief. I believed he was overstating things. Chief Roberts approached the podium once more, his own demeanor noticeably strained. I believe we should modify our proceedings, he remarked, glancing at the funeral director. It seems Ranger will be with his partner for the rest of the service. Throughout the service, Ranger stayed on the casket, a quiet protector watching over his companion. The funeral director, showing impressive flexibility, modified the arrangements to accommodate the dog. The customary pallbearers were in place, though questions remained regarding the concluding procession. We need to proceed to the cemetery shortly, the director said to Captain Walsh. Walsh responded with a nod, then moved towards the casket with deliberate steps. Ranger spoke softly, mirroring the tone he had often heard Mike use. We need to take Mike now. The dog's ears twitched at the familiar name, his amber eyes following Walsh's movements. He remained still, shifting his weight and settling more firmly atop the American flag. Mike's sister, Elaine, rose from her seat, dabbing her eyes with a crumpled tissue. She walked towards the casket, her steps unsteady but resolute. She had observed the strong connection between her brother and his canine partner from the very beginning. She recalled numerous family dinners where Ranger sat at Mike's feet, and holidays where the dog received gifts alongside everyone else. Ranger, she said softly, extending her hand palm up, mirroring the gesture she had seen Mike use many times. It's okay, boy. The Belgian Malinois' attention turned to her, his nostrils flaring slightly as he analyzed her scent. The scent was close enough to Mike's to be recognized as belonging to his family. His ears moved forward, his head tilting as if assessing the situation. Mike would be so proud of you, she said, her voice cracking. You were the best partner he could have wished for, the best friend. Something in her words, or perhaps her tone, appeared to connect with the dog. Ranger looked from Elaine to the casket below him, then back to her. A quiet whine came from his throat. It wasn't a sound of distress now, but of inquiry. I know, she murmured. I miss him too. With extreme gentleness, she placed her hand on the dog's back. Ranger tensed briefly, then relaxed into the touch. Elaine stroked his fur, mirroring the way she'd seen her brother do after their shifts together. We need to take Mike to his resting place now, she explained, speaking as if the dog understood every word. Perhaps he did. Will you help us do that? The chapel remained utterly silent, with everyone holding their breath as they observed this private moment. Ranger regarded Elaine for a considerable time, then rose slowly and deliberately. His movements were measured and respectful, ensuring his stability on the casket's curved top. For a brief moment he stood rigidly, resembling a dog in peak condition. Then, with a grace that moved many to tears, he descended from the casket, stepping gently onto the carpeted floor near Elaine. Wilson moved forward with the leash, but Elaine halted him with a raised hand. Let him walk with us, she said, with no restrictions. Mike would have wanted it. Chief Roberts gave his consent, and Wilson moved aside. The pallbearers arranged themselves, raising the casket with coordinated precision. As the solemn procession began its descent down the central aisle, Ranger stepped alongside the casket, positioned at heel, precisely where he would have walked beside Mike during patrols. Outside, the autumn air held the fragrance of rain in the distance. The hearse door closed with a quiet finality, sealing the last chapter. Ranger watched, a flicker of confusion returning to his stance. Wilson approached, anticipating the dog might need reassurance, but before he could offer the leash, Ranger acted. The Belgian Malinois walked purposefully to the police motorcycle that would lead the procession, Mike's motorcycle, now solemnly draped in ceremonial black bunting. Ranger settled beside it, adopting the familiar posture he'd used countless times when Mike was getting ready for their shift. Captain Walsh looked at the motorcycle officer who would be leading the procession. "Can you accommodate him?" The officer, who had previously worked with Mike and Ranger for years, responded immediately. "It would be an honor, sir." With care, the officer assisted Ranger into the specially adapted sidecar, designed for K-9 transport during parades and ceremonial events. The dog relaxed, his demeanor alert yet composed, as if accepting the situation. Upon arrival at the cemetery, the concluding ceremonies proceeded with military formality. The honor guard conveyed the casket to the gravesite, with Ranger following closely, still unrestrained but maintaining impeccable control. The chaplain offered concluding words of solace as the casket was placed. As the formal folding of the flag commenced, Ranger observed with unwavering attention, following each action. The carefully folded triangle was given to Mike's mother, who held it close. Next, the rifle salute occurred, 3 volleys that echoed through the autumn air. Ranger reacted slightly at the initial shots, but remained in position. By the 3rd volley, he remained perfectly still at attention, seemingly acknowledging the respect being shown. As the bugler played taps, the somber notes lingered in the air. Ranger advanced 3 steps. With careful movements, he lifted his paw again, pressing it against the casket in that customary salute, a concluding gesture between comrades that moved many to tears. When the final note subsided, Ranger retreated, then settled down near the gravesite, his chin resting on his paws. He remained steadfast until the last mourner had left. The cemetery gradually emptied, with mourners departing in small groups, many taking a moment to look back at the striking scene. A devoted dog kept watch near his partner's final resting place. Mike's family were the last to leave the gravesite. His father knelt beside Ranger, placing a calloused hand on the dog's back. "You'll always have a home with us, boy," he said, his voice thick with feeling. Mike would have wanted us to support one another at this time. The Belgian Malinois looked up at him, its amber eyes reflecting a depth of understanding that went beyond the boundaries of species. He shifted a little closer, acknowledging the bond, then turned his attention to the casket now being placed in the ground. Captain Walsh came forward, taking off his formal hat and holding it to his chest. He stated that the department had considered Ranger's future. Traditionally, canines are retired after their handlers pass away. Mike's mother looked up sharply. He was too young to retire. Too skilled. Walsh nodded. "That's what we believe as well. With your permission, Officer Wilson has volunteered to become Ranger's new handler. They already share a connection, and Wilson initially trained with Mike." Elaine wiped away fresh tears. Mike would agree. He often said Wilson was the only other officer Ranger seemed to truly listen to. As if in agreement with her words, Ranger stood, shaking his coat slightly. He glanced between the family members and Walsh, then purposefully moved to stand beside Wilson, who had come closer quietly. "I'll never replace Mike," Wilson said, his voice faltering. "I wouldn't attempt to, but I pledge to you and Ranger that I will respect their partnership in our work together." Ranger looked once more at the gravesite, his stance conveying a sense of finality, an acceptance that had not been visible previously. With deliberate movements, he turned and walked beside Wilson toward the waiting police vehicles. He did not look back. As any good officer would, he was moving forward, carrying the legacy of his fallen partner with him into whatever missions awaited. The bond between a canine officer and their handler exemplifies one of the most sincere partnerships in law enforcement, founded on absolute trust, steadfast loyalty, and a connection that transcends verbal communication. The final tribute given by Ranger serves as a poignant reminder that profound feelings are often conveyed through actions rather than words. Have you ever observed a moment where an animal appeared to comprehend death or loss in a manner that seemed inexplicable? What fosters such strong connections between humans and their canine partners that they can surpass even the final parting? If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like and share it with someone who appreciates the extraordinary bond between handlers and their canine partners. These incredible dogs risk their lives alongside human officers every day, demonstrating courage and loyalty that deserve our recognition and respect. Subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you never miss another powerful story about police canine heroes. Our collection of true stories about dogs keeps expanding, with new videos added each week to display these extraordinary collaborations. Please view the suggested videos currently displayed for additional moving narratives that emphasize the steadfast commitment of police dogs nationwide. We will also see you again tomorrow at the same time with another fresh video.